to talk about some of your favorite men and women of the Bible. A couple of the chapters are devoted to just focusing on the kind of heroes and heroines or important figures. Talk about the chapter about the men in the Bible who were the most compelling for you as both a scholar and a writer, first to research about, but also to write about. I'm partial to David, but
he's a winner, isn't he?
I have skin in the game.
He's a winner. Yeah, and you're well named. Yeah, so, well, I'd have to say, lest I be struck down by lightning, that God is my favorite character, right?
It's a little too easy, but
God gets a whole chapter, yeah, which doesn't answer your question, which was about the male characters. That's its own chapter, and then there's a chapter on God. There's so many different names for God and ways in which God is in the Bible that even, of course, that chapter doesn't do it justice. People write tomes of theology on biblical text, right? So but I hope to at least show some of the different ways that God shows up and is named in biblical text. So God is a fascinating character in the Bible. But David is a great one, and not least because he's such a complete character. Some of the people we meet in the Bible are rather flat as literary. How many of you are writers? Yeah, I see a few hands going up. To create a full and complex character takes a lot of doing and sometimes a lot of pages. And the Bible is severely economical. It doesn't spend a whole lot of time in any one area. David gets a lot of press though, and he's a pretty complete character as described within one set of biblical texts in Samuel and Kings. But he's described differently in a different set of texts, which really, in Chronicles, if you're familiar with this stuff, he's sort of whitewashed. So you have these very different images of David, even within the biblical text itself. But he's a much fuller character, so he is a lot of fun to work with. Yeah.
How about the female characters? I hate to see the word characters,
Yeah.
It just sounds kind of weird, the figures in the
Yeah,
Bible.
yeah. It depends, and this is true actually for the male characters too, it kind of depends on my mood at the time.
How so?
That if I'm feeling feisty, I want a feisty woman. She's my thing. But if
Well, now who would that be? Let's start with that. Who's some of the feisty ones for you?
One is Delilah. I have a really good friend I grew up with whose name was Delilah Arabella. Could that be more baroque? So Delilah is, I think, a really interesting character. Maybe I'll read a little bit of what I wrote about Delilah. But as a kind of counterpoint to Delilah, I might pick Ruth, who is a model of loyalty, and she's a very beautiful character. Of course, she gets her own book. She's a woman with a title, if you will. The book is titled after Ruth, right? And it's in that book that in Ruth that we read that famous text that is often recited at weddings, which is kind of funny, because Ruth says to her mother-in-law, "Wherever you go, I will go. Where you lodge, I will lodge. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God," which is often recited at weddings. But many people don't know that it's actually originally a statement between two women who are actually in-laws of all things, right?
They're both widows.
Yes.
They both become widowed because one loses their husband and one loses their son.
That's right. And for more literary fun, the book begins by saying that there's a famine in Bethlehem, which is where they live. And now you guys will love this. Knowing a little Hebrew, Beth, or Beit, means house in Hebrew, and Lechem means bread or food. So it's the place of plenty, if you will. And there's a famine in the place of plenty, the very beginning. Now you know a little Hebrew, you can appreciate. So there's all this literary artistry that happens in these texts. It's fun to learn a little bit more about that, I think, for me anyway. So that's how Ruth begins. But yeah, let me read a little bit about Delilah, if you could indulge me in that. Great. Thank. So in these chapters dealing with different characters, I bounce from one to another quite rapidly. And just before this, I was talking a little bit about Deborah, who is a judge. She's described as a leader in the Hebrew Bible. Judges may have performed this kind of judicial function like we think of judges today, but they were also military leaders and religious leaders. And Deborah, a woman, is described in that way, and there's no more discussion of that. It's like totally matter of fact. And we're thinking, a woman? I'm thinking, a woman? But again, the Bible is intriguing in part for all the things it leaves unsaid. Like, I guess it was normal that a woman could be a judge in ancient Israel. So Deborah sort of heads up the book. She appears fairly early on. And she is described in all sorts of positive ways, and we get on to the next thing. And so Delilah, I find, is a kind of counterpoint. They appear in the same book, the Book of Judges. Unlike Deborah, Delilah has fired the imagination of creative artists through the centuries. Handel's oratorio Samson reflects Milton's Samson Agonist, and Samson composed a whole opera based on this biblical story. Tom Jones's version of Delilah quickly became a hit in the 1960s and has been remade many times. Leonard Cohen sings about Delilah in Hallelujah, as does Bob Dylan in Tombstone Blues. The story is at the heart of songs by the Grateful Dead, P.J. Harvey, and the Gershwin brothers. Regina Spektor's song Samson puts the story in a modern setting, adding, "The Bible didn't mention us, not even once." In the Bible, Delilah is described as a foreign love interest of Samson, the famously philandering Israelite judge. Using her womanly wiles, Delilah persuaded the rather doltish Samson to tell her the true secret of his strength, his long hair. He had lied to her about it previously a couple of times, and she betrayed him then too, which makes readers wonder about Samson's judgment. Then she promptly spilled the beans to his enemies, the Philistines, because they offered to pay her lots of money, and that's the last we hear of Delilah. Depending on whom you ask or how you read, the literary character of Delilah is a crude product of androcentric or male-centered thinking, or she undermines exactly that. Either Delilah is the distasteful stereotype of misogynistic fantasy, a gold-digging, treasonous liar whose beauty is a trap, a lover who cannot be trusted. Or she reveals the rotten underbelly of patriarchy, wherein a grossly incapable man is stripped of his authority only by a resourceful woman who is able to get things done despite the severe limitations of her culture. Perhaps it's a little of both.
I saw somebody go like this just now.
She's a fun character in some ways, and of course she is the enemy other. So one of the things that I hope in this book to do, by providing some historical background, some information about the Bible's development, is to show some of the ideas, some of the perspectives of the people responsible for it. For instance, there is an us and a them. So there is the folks on the inside responsible for these texts, and they are unapologetically persons of faith, writing from that perspective, not as journalists, but as persons of faith. And there are the others. And so it helps us, I think, to appreciate these texts when we know, again, something about that background.
I hear what you're saying, but all I'm hearing and seeing is Victor Mature and Hedy Lamarr. Come on. Someone was thinking about that. And that's what's so fascinating about this book, is that you really are trying to tie your scholarly research to how the Bible manifests itself in pop culture settings, which is kind of where I come from. And I'm curious, just as a general feeling, how do you think a Cecil B. DeMille or a Ned Flanders, who also gets a mention in the book, you can only imagine, how do pop culture references and the use of the Bible help and hurt our understanding of the Bible? Because obviously when you think about pop culture, you think of sort of facile excursions into it, and sometimes caricaturing of it and then ruining its message. But how do you think it helps and hurts through the years as you've been studying its connection?
I'd like to say it always helps in this way, that it gets people thinking about these biblical texts. The reality is that lots of folks don't necessarily have the opportunity to learn more about and so make critical judgments about what they have seen or heard, and so sometimes accept out of hand things that are gross generalizations of some biblical material. For instance, just a kind of blanket statement about biblical ethics is challenging, as the clip from West Wing indicates. What is that exactly? Because there are things within the Bible that we all agree are rather abhorrent, that we wouldn't do. And yet there are also incredibly lofty and inspirational ways of being promoted by the Bible that we can only strive to reach in our lifetime. This great capacity for love, for instance, is certainly championed within these texts, as well as real condemnation sometimes of the other, which we may do well to question, I think.
I have one more question, but I want to open this up for questions from the audience first. I'll save my little punchline for the end, but we'd love to take some questions from folks, and then we'll sort of dance back and forth instead of just making it all about questions at the end. So if anybody has any questions.
Now, would you be able to give us some examples of extreme differences between the different denominations and the Bibles that they worship under?
Yeah, the biggest difference, I think, would be between the Jewish and Christian Bibles. They share in common a good chunk of text, but they are the most different of the faith groups that ascribe to biblical texts in this way. The Hebrew Bible, the books of the Christian Old Testament were originally written in Hebrew, and they are the same books that compose the Jewish Bible. So we have those in common. That is, Jews have in common with Christians that chunk of literature, Christian Old Testament, Jewish Hebrew Bible. But they're organized in a different way. That is, the order of the books appears differently between those two Bibles. And that can lead to some different interpretations. The Christians prioritize.
I was thinking mainly of the Christian denominations.
Uh-huh.
Are there any extreme differences that you've come across?
Yeah, well, the next breakdown would be between Protestant Christians and Roman Catholic or Eastern Orthodox Christians, because Protestant Christians don't include some books that are considered deuterocanonical, or sort of secondarily Bible, but still Bible for Catholics and Eastern Orthodox Christians. So those are quite different. But your question may be more about the ways in which they treat those biblical texts.
Yeah, the rituals and the holidays that would be striking.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I wish I knew more specifically, some of you may, about the difference between, say, the Eastern Orthodox calendar of religious festivals and the, say, Protestant Christian calendar of religious festivals. If you have any Greek Orthodox friends, you may know that they celebrate Easter on a different day than Protestant Christians do. So that's a bit of a difference.